Imagine you buy a product online from another country, or you are a small business owner trying to export your manufactured goods abroad. You completely rely on a massive, invisible web of global rules to ensure that your packages arrive safely, that you are not hit with random extortionate border taxes, and that big foreign corporations cannot just steal your hard-earned ideas. You take this predictability entirely for granted every single day. But what if I told you that the entire engine behind global trade is quietly grinding to a halt? What if the organization that keeps the international marketplace fair and open is currently facing a structural heart attack? This is not a hypothetical worry for the distant future. It actually just happened on the global stage. Trade ministers and diplomats from all over the planet packed their bags and gathered in Yaoundé, the capital city of Cameroon, for the 14th ministerial conference of the World Trade Organization. The stakes were incredibly high and they were there to fix the broken machinery of global commerce. But how did it end? It ended in complete, unmitigated failure. The meeting did not produce a joint ministerial declaration and could not even secure a simple chair's summary to capture a basic conference-wide consensus. They completely missed every single headline goal, including a crucial extension on the moratorium that stops countries from placing random expensive duties on digital e-commerce. That moratorium officially expired on March 26th, the very first day of the conference, leaving the digital world in a state of regulatory chaos. But the question is, why should you care about a failed meeting in Africa? Why does a breakdown in Swiss-based trade organization matter to your wallet? Because the rules that govern how the entire world buys, sells, and trades are under a massive, unprecedented strain. We are living through a dangerous era of intense geopolitical rivalry and swear policy uncertainty. And this rising volatility and fragmentation in the global trading system is actively threatening to tear down the stable conditions that developing nations completely rely on to expand their exports, attract foreign investment, and diversify their economies. We'll get to the specific gridlocks, the backroom political fights, and the rise of raw economic coercion in a moment. First, to truly understand exactly how the system broke, we have to look back at why this global referee was created in the first place. See, before this organization existed, the world economy ran on a very different set of rules. Right after the utter devastation of the Second World War, back in 1948, the international community created the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which everyone commonly refers to as GATT. For nearly 5 decades, GATT provided the foundational rules of much of the world's trade, focusing primarily on the exchange of physical goods across borders. But as technologies evolved and economies grew more complex, simple rules for physical goods were no longer enough. The world desperately needed a more robust permanent referee that could handle services and digital assets. This need led to years of intense, grueling negotiations known as the Uruguay Round, running from 1986 all the way to 1994. The result of that massive diplomatic effort was the landmark Marrakesh Agreement, which officially gave birth to the World Trade Organization on January 1st, 1995. Headquartered in peaceful city of Geneva, Switzerland, this new intergovernmental body did not just take over for GATT. It expanded the global rule book completely to cover the modern world of service and complex intellectual property. Today, it has grown into a massive institution with 166 member states representing over 98% of all the global trade. Developing countries like Pakistan were right there at the beginning as founding members, betting their economic future on the promise of a rules-based system. And what exactly was that promise? The core architecture of the organization was built on several beautiful, high-minded objectives. It was designed to establish and uphold the rules governing international trade with the ultimate aim of promoting global economic growth and generating real employment opportunities across nations. It was meant to serve as a permanent, fair platform for negotiations and oversight, lowering trade barriers through non-discriminatory practices. It was built to provide a highly structured, reliable mechanism for resolving trade disputes, thereby fostering global peace, economic predictability, and geopolitical stability. It wanted to enhance the transparency of decision-making, empower smaller and developing nations with real voice in global governance, and systematically reduce their operational costs so they could seamlessly integrate into global markets. It was an attempt to replace arbitrary political power with clean, consistent, and rules-based governance. To make this dream a reality, every single member had to agree to play by a set of sacred principles. The first is what they called the most favored nation principle, which demands that you treat all your trading partners completely equally, though free trade agreements are a special exception since those exclusive benefits stay between the specific parties. The second is the national treatment principle, which establishes that once a foreign product, service, or a piece of intellectual property legally enters your domestic market, you must treat it exactly the same way you treat your own domestic products. No hidden penalties, no biased regulations, and no arbitrary corporate favoritism. The system promised fair competition, a steady reduction in tariff and non-tariff barriers, absolute predictability, and special concessions to give developing countries a fair chance to grow. It sounds like a flawless machine on paper, does it not? It sounds like the perfect antidote to global conflict. But in the real world, the machine is completely falling apart. The first and perhaps the most devastating structural crisis is the total paralysis of the dispute settlement mechanism. Think of this as the Supreme Court of the world trade. For years, if a powerful nation bullied a smaller country by violating trade rules, the smaller country could take them to this court, get a binding ruling, and enforce compliance. But right now, the Supreme Court is facing a complete manufactured crisis that has entirely weakened rule enforcement. Without a binding dispute resolution system, the rules completely lose their credibility, compliance dramatically declines, and the very foundation of global multilateralism is directly threatened. It has become a court with no power to pass a final judgment. And it gets worse. While the court is paralyzed, the rule-making machinery is completely stagnant. Think about how fast the digital economy moves. Think about e-commerce, cloud data, and digital services. Yet the organization's negotiations have completely failed to keep pace with this digital trade expansion, leaving behind massive governance gaps. The existing rules still reflect a 20th century trade structure which is entirely inadequate for managing modern global value chains. We are essentially trying to run a modern digital economy on a rulebook written when dial-up internet was a luxury. Why can't they just update the rules? Because the organization suffers from an institutional rigidity known as a decision-making deadlock. Every single decision requires a total unanimous consensus among all 166 diverse members. This means that a single nation can completely block progress, leading to incredibly slow negotiations and heavily diluted outcomes. Timely reform has become an institutional impossibility. This structural paralysis has created a dangerous vacuum. And look at what is rushing in to fill it. We are witnessing a terrifying rise of protectionism and raw geopolitics. Instead of relying on a neutral referee, powerful nations are increasingly turning to the unilateral use of tariffs, economic coercion, and exclusive bilateral trade agreement. It signals a massive historical shift away from a rules-based system straight toward a power-based trading system. It is a return to the law of the jungle, where the biggest economy wins by default and the smaller nations are completely crushed into crossfire. This is exactly why reform is no longer a technical recommendation. It has become an absolute historical imperative. To survive this era of fragmentation, the international community has to step forward and aggressively undertake several radical changes. First, they must fully restore the credibility of the dispute settlement mechanism by re-establishing a binding and universally accepted court that cannot be blocked by political games. Secondly, they have to ensure true fairness alongside predictability. This means boldly addressing long-standing structural market distortions like massive agricultural subsidies and unequal market access that have favored wealthy empires for decades. Developing countries are standing up and emphasizing a deep, uncomfortable truth. The organization must ensure not just the rule of the law, but the rule of justice. They must fundamentally reform special and differential treatment to reflect the harsh realities of the modern world. Furthermore, the institution needs to embrace transparency, demand better corporate reporting on hidden subsidies, and build in institutional flexibility by encouraging plurilateral agreements on things like services and e-commerce, ensuring they remain inclusive and integrated into the broader framework. We are standing at a highly decisive juncture. The failure in Cameroon was a loud, unavoidable wake-up call. Fixing the system is not a technical core for lawyers in Geneva. It is a systematic and normative battle for the future of global stability. It requires immense political will, a deep sense of shared responsibility, and a delicate balance between institutional flexibility and unity. If we can craft more people-centered and sustainability-oriented trade rules, we can create millions of jobs and systematically reduce global poverty by supporting the integration of emerging economies. But if the deadlock continues, if the great powers keep choosing coercion over cooperation, the engine of global trade will completely shatter. And the open marketplace that sustained decades of human progress will vanish into an era of unchecked economic warfare. The machinery is broken, the old rules are failing, and the choice belongs entirely to the nations willing to compromise before it is too late.